Try and answer as many questions as I can. Actually, in view of the fact that Deputy Scanlon is there, a lot of the questions tonight relate to the valuations legislation. A lot of what Deputy Scanlon and others spoke about. However, I do want to point out that in relation to small vacant premises, there is a provision in Section 8 that the vacant premises, that is the small shop, that might be, the people might be living over it at the back of it, that won't be subject to a minimum rate being paid even if the premises is vacant. You spoke about, I think, Tubbercurry and Sligo as well as Callan and Kilkenny were two of the towns that Michael Ring picked, and he's right, two very similar towns in the sense that they have suffered a lot and would have high rates of vacancy. It is absolutely important that government policy in one area doesn't contradict government policy in another area. It's easy to say that maybe and difficult to enforce, particularly when it comes to the funding of local authorities, because each authority is a law unto itself, effectively in their own jurisdiction. But the points that are made in relation to the vacancy in town centres across the country are well made, and I agree with them. And one of the main new provisions in this piece of legislation is about allowing councillors at municipal district level to bring in that variation scheme themselves and to target, and it's in response to maybe what some of the rural independents spoke about earlier on. If the councillors in West Cork decide that they want to target the rural pub for a reduced rate, if the councillors in South Sligo want to target the main street in Tubbercurry and Ballymote and those kind of towns, it is absolutely the intention of this legislation that the councillors will be able to do that. And that type of independent action hasn't existed. In relation to Section 5, which Deputy O'Brien mentioned, it's merely a restatement of the provision from the 1978 legislation, where it's a mechanism to ensure that local authorities don't continually increase the rate that's struck annually and don't become too reliant on the commercial sector, I suppose, for the funding of their local authorities. It's been used in 1999, 2000, 2001 and 2002 to varying amounts. Also the issue, and this is a strange one but it's true, unauthorised developments are not exempt from rates. Now it is a matter of the valuations office are the people who do the valuations, but there is no automatic exemption because something doesn't have planning permission. Absolutely, it's already an unfair advantage if a commercial unit doesn't have planning permission. Deputy Castles, Deputy Casey, and most of the speakers support the thrust of the bill. Essentially, this bill, it's a bit of it's a contradiction in itself in that it's aiming to do an awful lot in the sense that we haven't had, substantial legislation in this area for so long. And yet I accept that some of the provisions might seem modest in nature, but to allow that flexibility, whether it's through the waiver mechanism or through that local variation and alleviation scheme that the bill will allow for, is something that we've never done before. I absolutely acknowledge that the centre of towns and villages across the country, it varies, and even varies within counties. Some towns, for whatever reason, doing better than others. And there's a huge effect in terms of the online shopping sector, if you like. I don't think that the rates legislation will be able to solve that particular conundrum. But I'm certainly open to what numerous speakers asked, which was a broader discussion about both the valuation element and the actual rates, the future policy direction in terms of rates legislation. Several senators or deputies spoke about having that vision for our market towns across the country. And it's not just the market towns, some of the larger urban centres as well. And I think it was Deputy O'Sullivan mentioned, for commercial reasons, premises being kept vacant in towns across the country, and some very substantial towns. And you named your own, I could name a couple of others where similar situations have happened. And that is one thing, I suppose, that the removal of the 100% rebate would be able to specifically target across the country. Deputy Aylward raised with me earlier about the issue where local authorities are pursuing rates bills while appeals have not yet been decided by the Valuations Office. Now, I haven't been able to get an answer yet, but I will endeavour to get it, because I think it's a fair question to raise, that you know, fairly serious letters arriving from local authorities while appeals still haven't been concluded by the Valuations Office. As I said, most of the speakers have expressed support. There is a balance here. Deputy O'Sullivan said it herself in her contribution, between ensuring that local authorities can be funded, but that we have an appropriate modern system of commercial rates across the country. She raised the concerns of forecourt operators not being able to take class actions. It's a competition law matter, effectively, and I got those emails as well, and numerous ones, that when it comes to businesses, competition law is very strict in terms of appeals that can be heard. But I can understand maybe some of the frustrations. And it isn't the case that there is a uniform approach across the country for, you know, the valuation is based on the size, solely on the size of the premises. It isn't. It's based on a number of factors. Size is a crucial one. But I really want to emphasise about, again, the alleviation scheme mechanism has the potential to allow the councillors at local level to say, for Eamon O'Keefe's example of the pub that built a function room in the 80s or the 70s, that is empty now nearly all of the time, except for the funerals and the political clinics. You know, if the local councillors wish to target such premises with alleviation measures, then they're free to do so. Several deputies spoke about the issue of trying to ensure an equitable mechanism for maybe the repayment of rates that are due, along with the payment of rates that have just fallen. I mean, central to this bill, along with the abolition of the two moieties, is to give that presumption of help for the business owner that wants to engage with the local authority. I mean, I completely disagree with Deputy Cass's earlier suggested. I don't think he was serious about it necessarily, that we should take collection of rates off local authorities and give it to the revenue commissioners. No, I mean, I think local authorities are best placed to be able to use some sort of discretion. The revenue commissioners are very necessarily bound by the rules and laws under which they operate, but local authorities, to my knowledge, and Deputy Scanlon mentioned, I mean, I've done the same, bring people in to discuss arrears and difficulties that they find themselves in. Deputy Pringle said something that is really in the realm of fake news. He spoke about multinational companies exempt from rates altogether. That doesn't exist. There is no provision for multinational companies to be exempt from rates altogether. Deputy Collins and Healy-Rae, I agree with most of what they said, even though a lot of what they said was about Minister Ross and not about this particular piece of legislation. But I would say they should be supporting this bill based on the arguments they made tonight, because it allows the potential for those alleviation measures for those villages that they spoke about in South Kerry and in West Cork. So we will be back. Just the final, Deputy Troy raised the issue of commitment. He asked me, would I give a commitment that this bill will be completed as soon as possible? I absolutely do give that commitment. Obviously, there's a whole lot of legislation in relation to Brexit, but it is my intention that this bill will be finalised at the earliest opportunity. But the Business Committee of the House will have a say on that, but we intend on having it completed as early as possible.